Welcome to a new episode in an ongoing Legendarium series about strange things that happened during the Middle Ages. And in this installment, we'll talk about a truly strange idea: did the Black Death do Europe any good? As it turns out, it may have. The devastating population losses that happened because of the Black Death may have helped to move Europe from a medieval society to a modern one. The Black Death is rightfully seen as one of the greatest disasters in human history. Almost 200 million of the world's 500 million people died. The suffering of the generation stricken should never be underestimated. Yet for the generations that followed, life became better than it had been before the plague. Indeed, the revolution in social relations, economics, and technology may have helped to move Europe from the Middle Ages to the modern age. During the medieval warm period, which lasted from about 900 to 1300 AD, most of Europe had a Mediterranean climate, and the population tripled because of bountiful harvests. Yet that population growth also meant that the landed aristocracy could squeeze the peasants, as labor could be had cheaply. But with so many laborers gone after the Black Death, the survivors were able to call the shots. They could demand wages for their work, and if a noble wouldn't pay, they simply went elsewhere. Peasants began using money to buy land of their own, and when the nobles tried to push wages back down, this led to a wave of revolts. Peasant uprisings erupted in France in 1358, England in 1381, Lithuania in 1401, and Transylvania in 1437. Though the peasant revolts generally ended in failure, the lords simply could not turn back the clock. Former serfs were working for themselves now, not their lords. More ambitious peasants began to move to the cities, where they could learn crafts and trades. The most successful among them became part of a new urban middle class, and this changed the tripartite structure of medieval society, which was based on churchmen, nobles, and peasants. This new urban middle class spent some of their money on luxury goods, but they also became patrons of the arts and sciences. Yet it wasn't just the aristocracy that was starting to lose power. That other pillar of medieval society, the church, also lost a lot of respect during the plague. Despite the fact that many pious monks and nuns worked with the sick during the bubonic plague, that sadly meant that the clergy was hit especially hard. And despite these sacrifices, the church simply could not stop the plague. Not only did this make people more likely to question the church, but there were far fewer clergymen who were able to push back. And of course, this led to more people challenging church teachings and abuses. As the middle class became more educated, they valued reason and logic more than all-conquering faith. And since there weren't as many people available to do work, people would have to use some of that reason and logic to invent labor-saving devices that could keep society functioning. With fewer men available to serve in armies, warlords invested more in gunsmiths. By 1411, the matchlock, the first trigger for a firearm, was invented. And in 1421, the famed architect Brunelleschi invented a 3-speed hoist with an intricate system of gears, pulleys, and screws, all powered by a single yoke of oxen turning a wooden tiller. Effectively, he invented the world's first mechanical crane, which made it possible to build buildings taller than ever before. But the most important invention of the post-Black Death world must be the Gutenberg press. Because the Black Death had left some monasteries almost empty, that took away most of the people who could read and write. So who would write and copy books? Johann Gutenberg had the answer. He invented a printing press that could copy hundreds of copies of books. Before the Black Death, hospitals were simply charitable houses where the sick could be isolated so they wouldn't infect others. These houses took in widows, orphans, and travelers, serving as way stations and hospices. Yet the disastrous Black Death forced them to make curing the sick their primary mission. And when traditional medicine failed, they had no choice but to innovate. Within these new hospitals, medicine became observational and practical, with a greater focus on anatomy and surgery rather than herbalism and magic. That wraps things up for this episode of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.